A tale as old as the eternal bout between Space Marine and demons. The tale of walking down a riverside with a sword on an epic quest to do something. Well, this is like the fifth closest thing to that because today I'm talking about a game called Wolfhound, the last of the clan of Grey Dogs. Yeah, I'm just gonna call it Wolfhound instead. So, Wolfhound is a hack-and-slash action RPG made by Ukrainian developers Meridian93. They're still around, they just make casual games now. You're probably going to see this company pop up periodically, as I used to play their games a lot as a kid. They're very much unknown in the West, and for the most part, there's always something to mention about their games. In Wolfhound, you play as Wolfhound, who wakes up in the middle of the road. You have a quest book that reads, "A man from a castle with mark of a wolf on his hand killed my parents and made me a slave many years ago. When I was freed, I found out that the owner of the castle goes by Man-Eater. This man must not be allowed to stay alive." Cool, I don't need more of a plot, that's as much excuse as I need to get invested. First thing you'll notice is the old man screaming in the top right, and that you're right beside an invisible wall. However, if you go in the other direction, there is a cart that's broken down because it probably ran over a wolfhound in his sleep, but they didn't expect wolfhound to be made out of polygon, which as we all know is superior to wood. Then, some wolves show up because they're not allowed to have fun. First off, your opponents can and will dodge or block your attacks, so it actually takes some effort to kill them. Always spamming M1 doesn't work. But you're not in any actual danger here, this is basically a tutorial, and after a slash or two, the wolves are dead and you level up. Now while you will level up in real life if you happen to kill a wolf with a sword, it's not as easy as this game makes it seem. So after leveling up, you have a really nice bland stat screen, but at least it tells you your raw damage as well as how fast you attack, which is actually what makes it nice. I should mention now that this whole game is in Russian. I've heard rumors that there was an English translation at some point, yet I can't even find proof of it existing. Thankfully, this game is super moddable, but if you want to play this and don't speak fluent Russian, you're gonna be stuck for the most part. So then I walk 10 feet away from the cart and BAM! There's a cutscene right after the wolves. It's about 3 minutes long and apparently they're looking for an escaped slave, that's you. They're pretty sure you're not on the other side of the river, that's true. Then they talk about how they have a magical wolf beast that forms from wolves drinking a person's blood while they're still alive. Then how a guy committed suicide after seeing his drowned wife's ghost, and then they abruptly see you and attack. So yeah, now that we're caught up on the lore of Wolfhound, how's the game? Well, you have a bow and arrows in your inventory. Why? I'll probably sell them because you're not going to be killing people with them, that's for sure. Running away sorta works if the third guy split up, but I need melee to be able to hurt them, as when you get hit you can get stunned for half a second. This is already annoying and it becomes far worse when your attack takes 5 real-time seconds to fire. Yeah, when it comes to Diablo clones, some favor melee characters and some favor ranged characters. This game hates ranged characters with a passion, just grab a sword and get shit done. Which to be fair is kinda what Wolfhound is about, but still. Bows do deal a lot more damage than swords, but it's not worthwhile until you find a bow that can one-shot basically anything. Plus, it's not like you can get your arrows back, you have to buy them yourself. I should probably bring up now that this is a movie-based game, which kinda explains the whole everything. It's based off the 2006 Russian movie Wolfhound from the clan of Grey Dogs, which I mean is kinda like Conan the Barbarian but with Russian mythology. The movie itself is pretty good, and this game follows the plot fairly closely. Now it does add a few side missions of its own, which I'll get to in a moment, but it also removes the awkward love whatever the hell that was going on in the movie. The writing's not quite as hot, but it's an improvement over the movie plot-wise. See, if you've ever watched another review show called Ross's Game Dungeon, you would know that there's another game based off this movie called Requital, or in Russian, Wolfhound Revenge of the Grey Dog. Yeah, that's totally not confusing at all. Anyway, what happened was the company that sold the game license ended up selling it to two different publishers, 1C and Excalibur Publishing. 1C decided that they wanted to either cover their bases or make more money and gave the license to two developers, Meridian93 and Gaijin. So now we have 3 games based off the same movie, which already seems kinda stupid because I can't name any other license that had this happen to them. But the cherry on the cake is that all of these came out within a month of each other. Imagine walking into a Walmart or Target and then you just see 3 different games all named after the newest Marvel movie or whatever, and they're all on the same console in the new releases section. They're all drastically different games too, but Meridian93 gets points for being first to market. So how are the other games? Well, here's a little take on Gaijin's take on Wolfhound, known as Wolfhound Path of Warrior, which is how the game was officially named in English. Reviews say that the game is terrible and the footage isn't convincing me otherwise. That's all I can really say about it. It reminds me of the Lord of the Rings game, but like, the mistranslation of the name is better than the game itself. The problem here is that the game comes with Star Force and no crack, which doesn't work on my modern PC because even Windows is smart enough to know that Star Force was a mistake. So yeah, can't play it. As for Requital, well, I'm not actually going to talk about Requital because Ross's video is 45 minutes long and explains everything there is about it. I'd actually say that Wolfhound, the one with the really long name, is the best of the trio, but this is all subjective because in 2006 you're going up against some extremely stiff competition from AAA developers. But as for Diablo Budget Edition, well, we're not done with that yet. There's still a lot to talk about. For example, the fighting still sucks for now, you deal very little damage, but so do the AI. When you get overrun, well, that's how I found out that clicking on the potions is inventory management instead of using them, and when you end up with a whole posse later in the game, that's how you heal them. At this point, I realized that the game gave me the biggest red flag a hack and slash could give. It auto-saves after every single battle. Turns out that combat is basically like walking down the street, but you see some teenage hooligans up ahead, and you know you're gonna get jumped. There's no way to get around this, so you're trying to help yourself up before you pull out your sword and start chopping people's heads off, but, I mean, not in real life. Chopping teenagers' heads off is still illegal. For now. Some enemies I can one-shot, some I can't, but this is a moment I started burning through health potions. Thankfully, the game was pretty generous at the start and had a side path at the start of the game where I got a fair number of potions from, but I hate doing this. I've been burnt before for using health potions in other games early, and while using them on an encounter with a group of enemies one level higher than you does seem like the smart choice, I really didn't know if I can manage like this. Life regeneration is pretty slow in this game, and while these guys were pretty easy, there's always a risk later on. While whacking stuff with a sword is fun, turns out this overly complicated vampire lyre is actually a skill bar, and the skill tree is kind of a mess. You use the skills with F1 to F8 keys, which I personally think is kinda stupid and uncomfortable, but it works. Either way, with skills, the enemies die a bit faster now. This is starting to be a bit more fun. So yeah, in my quest to kick ass, I find a guy screaming for help. Considering how much trouble I'm having with every mob encounter and that I have to use health potions all the damn time, I don't think he'll survive. Well, he does, and this guy's my lifesaver because, dun dun dun, he's a trader, or a shop owner, or vendor, or whatever. He's a store. A store that talks about his dead crush as well as everyone else, but we're a victim here too. Unfortunately, there's no shortcut for selling things because, you know, selling things in a Diablo clone is a very foreign concept, but at least this game throws me a bone with one of the most amazing buttons ever to exist. Buy stack. I don't have to manually buy every potion now. This isn't so bad. Plus, the potions are pretty cheap as well, so I'm not too worried about losing health anymore. I end up walking to a dead town up the hill and notice that the game has a day and night cycle. It doesn't need one, or does it do anything, it's just a really nice addition for no reason. I talk to a runaway slave in the town, he talks about helping me, but then we get overrun by the man-eater's minions and he runs away like a coward. But it makes sense because these guys are level 12, which is a huge problem seeing as I fought everything I could this way, and I'm level 5. But after burning through a couple of health potions, I saved the day. Okay, I'm really glad I bought that stack now. So yeah, later on I find a ghost who tells me to kill, and Wolfhound's not above listening to hallucinations asking for him to commit wanton murder, so I kill a bunch of people who have the magic ability to create no sound at all. And oh god, they're level 16. I've killed every enemy I can fight, but I'm not even half that. I have to burn through health potions. If it wasn't for the shop down the road, this is a point where I'd say that this game becomes unbeatable. I do manage, but once I start getting better drops, potion management actually becomes tolerable now, as I make much more than what a stack of potions cost, and with better gear I can actually do some reasonable damage. So far, one of the things I also like is that there's no respawning enemies, so when someone dies, they stay dead. Even if you leave the level and load back in, their corpses are saved. Granted, it makes grinding impossible, but at the same time when I backtrack, I don't need to worry about enemies showing up to ruin my day, and you get a sense of progression when you show up someplace later and think, wow, I'd be arrested if this happened in real life. But overall, combat is best summarized as clearing a minefield of enemies and hoping for the best for when you inevitably get crowded. Any tough enemies like bosses are basically the same, just a slow and meticulous spam of attacks and health potions. As for the plot, it's mostly me kicking ass and saving slaves. I end up going into a side area where I found a dog, and now the dog joined my party. But when it dies, it stays dead, that's it, so I gotta spam health potions on it periodically too. Thankfully, enemies don't really target it much, and it has double if not triple my health, so it's all good. Plus, I swear, it regenerates health faster than I do. Having a dog as a companion is a welcome addition too, especially since it packs a half-decent punch. So yeah, with it I advance through the plot, complete every quest I can, find a secret area where I get a quest to steal a horse and a bunch of stacked traders, and oh. All my quests need me to be in the castle to progress. To enter the castle I have to wear a mask of some guy beat up to pretend to be a buddy of Maneater, and I don't have it. Now for the longest time I thought I'd been experiencing a glitch in the game where if I picked something up and my inventory was full, it would pick it up into the abyss, which I would consider to be a pretty unforgivable bug for a game centered about picking up loot, so I was going to make the final review score be worst inventory ever and start over, and save after every single quest, except it turns out that there weren't any issues in the first place, but that the inventory has multiple pages. So yeah, cool, I just spent a bunch of time dicking around because I can't read. Speaking of reading, how are the loot drops? Any affixes are hidden, all you get are slightly different stats on items. They didn't even really say how the affixes affect what you get. As far as I know, it could just be a roll of minimum range and maximum range, and the game just calls it a day. Actually, when you attack, you lose a little bit of your stamina each swing. That's not a huge problem because the special attacks are what really drain it and you can recover it with potions, right? Well, some weapons have been set to some extreme values, so they drain far more stamina than some special moves do, and you don't recover it fast enough to be able to attack reasonably fast. You'd have to burn through stamina potions faster than you already do. If you also end up using the rage buff, which makes you burn stamina several times faster with normal swing, but with the benefit of greatly increased attack speed, you'd be out of stamina in a single swing. So anything that has a stamina cost greater than 5, yeah, that's all vendor trash. Doesn't matter how good the stats are. Back to the game, I put the mask on and walk up to the Man-Eater's castle. They let me in, but realize that I'm an imposter because I'm larger than the guy I killed. Like most problems in my life, using swords is the answer here, and they work about as well as you'd assume. I get the horse, manage my inventory, and enter a smithy to kill some half-goat, half-man, half-terminator for his hammer, which I used to knock on the door. I end up finding the Man-Eater with a slave girl named Neelith, and throw my blade at him like in the movie, except far cheaper. Kick his ass and off to the dungeons with her, who knows of an imprisoned old man who built the castle. After I go through the dungeon and rescue the old man, he tells me the castle will collapse because when the Man-Eater dies, the castle does too, because that's how bricks apparently work. He tells me that we need to get a key from some monster in order to escape via a secret tunnel. Yeah, that's not a problem. I find him and my first attempt goes, oh. Okay, this is the most bullshit enemy I've faced so far. The Man-Eater was far easier even when he called for his reinforcements. Actually, I'd probably say that this is one of the most bullshit difficulty spikes I've ever seen, if not for my second attempt where I got most of his health down with arrows, which I should mention deal several times more damage than my sword does. And I was extremely lucky that he didn't go for me immediately, because he gets rid of half my life on hit, and by spamming potions and a bit of luck, the boss dies and I can get to Chapter 2. Chapter 2's plot is literally a caravan escort for the whole chapter. To let Neelith and the old man to go along with the caravan, you voluntold yourself to be a caravan guard. But turns out there's a bandit ambush up ahead, so the smart thing to do is go on foot with both of them and kill them all yourself. At that point, what's even the point of the caravan? I mean, other than to act as a dumpster for all my loot. Thankfully, you can tell your partners to stay back, but they can act as a decoy, can defend themselves. Don't go out engaging into battle. They don't have to be nearby, you don't have to follow them, and on top of that, they have several times their health. This is by far the best part of the game, the fact that escort missions are literally just companions that, while not helpful in battle, aren't completely useless either. The plot here is that you get ambushed, kill a bunch of bandits as well as their leader, and find out that 3 mages meet a contract with Morana, the goddess of death for all immortality. At this point, I find a side plot where a talking white tiger tells you to kill some people and free it, and Wolfhound decides that that's all on the up and up, and that freeing a wild animal that can telepathically talk to him is the best course of action. Shockingly, this doesn't come to bite him in the ass, and the tiger acts as a vendor. Yeah, sure, let's go with that. Then you kill some cultists and their resurrected abominations, because that's what feeds the three mages power. At this point, the budget starts to run low. Instead of a cutscene, we just get some text. This is lame. I've been spoiled by the cutscenes because they made this feel a lot less cobbled together. Let's talk about the cutscenes a bit. While the writing and models themselves aren't super impressive, the voice acting is actually really good, and so are the animations. They had a small budget and they used it wisely on the graphics and cutscene. They really help immerse me into the world. Speaking of the graphics, this game is set almost on the maximum settings, but not quite. I disabled full screen bloom and water shaders. Bloom because it's full screen bloom and I hate it, especially since it's a bit too harsh, and the water shaders don't like working nice on my computer. Maybe it's the Nvidia drivers or the fact that I'm on Windows 10, but yeah, these sure are water shaders. It actually changes color for no good reason sometimes, and unfortunately I only managed to save this as a screenshot because Ice-Stringly Piss Yellow is probably my favorite of the bugged colors. But when these two settings are disabled, you see some real atmosphere in the place. Granted, the game only has green forest, grey rock, and purple caves and dungeons as the only areas to explore, but the way Meridian used them ranges from passable to really nice. I stopped to look at the scenery here because this felt like someone put in a lot of effort on this little side area. Did they have to? No, but they still did it. The side areas don't have much more than some extra loot and mobs or vendors, but they're still a nice addition to break up the monotony. The game does have graphical glitches though, such as having its render distance far too low for shadows and corpses, and upping it in the config file didn't help, but they're pretty minor. Anyway, back to the game, you end up killing, I think this guy's the final boss actually, as he's grossly overleveled. This is almost as bad of a difficulty spike as the boss in the Man-Eater's dungeon, but unlike before where you try to stay just barely out of his range and shoot him down with arrows, your strategy here is to run up to him and try tanking as much damage as you can. If you, the dog, and these two AI dunces fight him all at once, he should be stun-locked just enough that he won't tear you apart. So he runs away, and this is lame again. You get a magic sword that you're apparently destined to use, and I didn't realize immediately, but equipping it gave me two new skills that made my life so much easier. Namely, a buff that increases my damage, and an area of effect attack that also knocks everyone in the radius down. Surprisingly, this isn't the end of Chapter 2, as we get a wizard who totally doesn't look evil at all to stop our caravan, warning us of danger ahead, and that those who don't listen to him are now slaves. Oh yeah, and he does a light show, which is good enough to convince us to go and commit borderline genocide to clear out and cleanse a holy site, but, you know, typical Tuesdays. So yeah, free some slaves, make a magic log appear, clear out bandits whose levels are anywhere between 10 and 20 higher than yours, which can mean that either they're a bit more tanky than you, or that they're very tough mob material. You end up invading their bandit camp and start slashing down enemies without much consideration, but there's a moment where you get overrun by the tough mobs, and it's as fast of a death as the bosses earlier. Except, you know, you can't exploit the AI because as soon as one gets hurt, they all rush you. I got lucky on a later attempt and managed to one-shot one of them with an arrow, and I guess RNG gave me the help I needed for the rest, but that arrow is what pushed it from hell to manageable hell. So yeah, I killed the head of the bandits in the underground, who I should mention is referred to as a man this whole time, so yeah, sure, we'll go with that. However, whoops, turned out that the creepy wizard protecting the caravan was actually a villain this whole time. How could anyone see that? Oh, wait. His justification that he's trying to be the fourth mage that gets immortality or something along those lines, and I don't really care at this point. All I can say is that he was the easiest boss so far, just a little tanky. But anyway, you run through a dungeon and end up finding the three mages, who themselves have become eldritch monstrosities, and they plead to you to bless them with the gift of death, because it turns out immortality sucks. Like the boss from before, they're tanky and aren't much of an active threat. This is no more difficult than the mob encounters. But with that, you complete Chapter 2 and the caravan escort that you didn't really have to escort at all. Chapter 3, people are suspects of you for having a bandit sword, which kinda makes sense. But this chapter is super lame. It's all text visually with voiceovers, no cutscenes. Your first quest is to clear the entrance of bandits, which makes sense. After you complete that, your next quest is to clear the surrounding walls of more bandits, which makes sense. After that, you do the same thing again. And after that, just guess. Well, if you assume that you do the same thing a fourth time, well, you're actually mistaken. It's another caravan escort. You rescue some girl from getting killed by a group of people for trying to do a good thing, then you're told to kill the chieftain of these people. Wolfhound gains a conscience, but she loses the argument because no isn't a good defense. So you go in, kill people, find the chieftain, but she doesn't want to die. She'll offer her treasures in exchange for her life, which seems like a pretty fair deal since you didn't want to kill her anyway. But it turns out she just leads you into an ambush, so you just steal her stuff anyway. You end up walking further down to the road to the Easter Island's head's judging circle. You know, that place where you tell little kids that they were bad and that the gods have decided to spare them. And then you kill ghosts and priestesses of Miranda to try and weaken the bad guy's power source in the dungeon underneath their heads. Yeah, this is stupid. After you walk back out, there's a massive bastard who's no more difficult than the mobs earlier. Looking back at the footage, I can't think of anything to say here. The game's quality really just takes a nosedive. It's all repetitive like this, with no real sense of purpose or accomplishment, nor cutscenes to keep me invested, nor new loot. In fact, these are the last unique enemies you fight in the game. Everything after this is just a grindy repeat of what you're doing now. At least the levels of the enemies are closer to your own now instead of how it was in Act 2, so while it's boring and easy now, I'd much rather something easy instead of having to risk death every time you walk up to a group of mobs. Thankfully, the rest of the chapter isn't that long. Your quest is now to find 3 artifacts of Miranda, which you find, just walking around. At first, I thought that they were quest items or something that would be a trick, like, if you put them on, you die or become evil, right? Yeah, I can totally see this game pulling that kind of trick on you, but no, they're just endgame items. I recommend everything but the sword, because that AoE ability is just a lifesaver. And this makes you at Chapter 4, which starts off with a cutscene, actually, but it's not good. You basically chase after a caravan during the entire chapter, and Chapter 4 is the shortest chapter by far. I ended up stocking on a bunch of potions, thinking that this place was going to be the ultimate grind, but it really wasn't. You end up facing the same bandits that you've seen before, but unlike Act 2, they're in their mid-20s level-wise. Instead of taking a dozen hits or so, they go down with just 2. You end up catching to the caravan like 30 minutes later, and then you get a neat-looking cutscene with just the ambient sound and standard music. I'm going to pause the video right here and talk about the music before I forget. I like good music in video games. This has great atmospheric music, but it's all randomized and there's only 17 minutes of it in total spread over 16 tracks. You're going to be hearing the same tracks over and over again, and the thing that bothers me the most is that the game's audio is bugged and likes to play several tracks at once. I just ended up muting the music because even though I liked it, it gets annoying after 10 hours. Plus, none of the themes are that memorable, they're just really fitting. And for a hack and slash, this game is reasonably long. It took me 12 hours to play, even though I think I can do it in 10 now that I know what I'm doing. And I'd say that this is a good game for speedrunning because of its linearity. While the game does overstay its welcome a little bit, that's the nice thing about finding weird budget titles. You never know what they're going to throw at you in this game. Well, someone cared about it, at least for the first half. Then it started getting corners cut, a lot more repetition, the chapters got way shorter, and it just felt like a chore at the end. It felt like there was a grand idea, but then they realized that they were out of money and just haphazardly assembled everything else in the second half and used what little time they had to make the custom animations and models for this cutscene. They didn't make music or custom sound effects here. This cutscene feels super out of place and half finished. I mean, especially here where you can see the world geometry clip through Wolfhound's neck. Anyway, back to whatever the hell the plot's trying to do. The bad guy punches the ground, which makes the land bridge collapse. You fall to your death, but you throw your magic sword at him. Well, it doesn't even get close, and you wait nearly 20 seconds as Wolfhound slowly climbs his way back up. Speaking of, that's a real great idea the villain had. So the ground falls into an abyss, right? What's he gonna do to get back to the other side? It's dead end. Anyway, Wolfhound does a pull-up, you kick some ass, kill the final boss who's dropped by 15 levels since the last time you saw him. He trips on the ground, his hostage escapes, but he's used as a sacrifice instead for the goddess to show up, who barely hurts you and ends up running away because that's what the goddess of death does, I guess. But you kill her, walk up a mountain, see heaven's door and say, yeah, nah mate, that's not for me. And that's the end of the game. There's no end screen or credits, it just dumps you back to the main menu. Fine, I'll click it myself. So yeah, that was Wolfhound. It was nearly 15 years ago that this game came out. It was a game. It's not really original, it was clearly limited, it didn't bring anything that new to the table, it's just there. It's not complete garbage, but it doesn't make me want to play it again. That's not to say that the game doesn't have highs, but the highs aren't from combat, they were from the plot, and they were the highest at the start of the game anyway. Honestly, I think this is a kind of game that would be like the best thing to be forgotten in a bargain bin somewhere. If you're open to the idea of playing a budget Diablo clone, you're probably going to find some enjoyment out of this, but you're not going to get addicted to a post-game that this doesn't have. I should probably mention that the developers tried to make kind of a sequel with the same engine called Defender Hero, which is how I found out about this game, but it got canned in alpha when they couldn't find a publisher who would accept it. It's kind of a mix between Diablo and a tower defense, and it's, Wolfhound was better. Plus, Wolfhound had the old man in the corner instead, and I guess he was run over by a horse in the meantime. So yeah, remember kids, vehicular manslaughter is still illegal, even if it's on a horse. Anyway, that's the game. Ghost shadows, huh? Yeah, I'm cool with that.